Hey everyone, bar chords are hard. They're not the easiest thing in the world to play, especially as a beginner guitarist, and they're sort of one of the make or break points in guitar playing, especially for new guitarists. Today I want to discuss some tips and tricks to help you make playing bar chords a bit easier. To get there, we need to understand something important about body mechanics though. It doesn't matter what position you put your wrist in, your hand in, even if it's the most comfortable position you can possibly get it in. Any position you adopt that is static, eventually tension will start to build up. Pressure develops, and that leads to pain. Bar chords are essentially movable chords. They're wonderful. Major, minor, 7, beautiful sounding chords. Problem is, it's a static position for your wrist, and that's going to build up tension quite quickly. That tension becomes pressure, that pressure leads to pain. We want to avoid that as best as we can, but unfortunately, no amount of secret technique is going to avoid that. No amount of strength, grip strength in your wrist is going to change that. Eventually that pain will rear its ugly head and you'll be stuck with it. So what do we do? Well, essentially, the first thing we need to do is there are techniques we can develop. Those techniques help us create breathing space. So likewise, in a sense, we don't want our hand position to be static too long. We need to develop the technique so we can adjust that position. So how do we do that in a chord shape that is essentially static? Well, first off, you can move your thumb. Most people don't know this when they first start learning the guitar. They just think, bar chord, they develop the vice-like grip, which essentially looks like this. Turn my guitar around. The thumb is pointing vertically here, up. So it's going up this way. And that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly reasonable. Absolutely nothing wrong with that technique at all. It's the strongest grip you can have. And it's really essential for new guitarists because they want every note to ring out. They want to put as much pressure in as they can. You're probably overcompensating, but we'll come back to that in a minute. You can put your thumb horizontally. So in a sense that way, it looks a bit like this. So the thumb is going towards the headstock instead along the fretboard. It's a subtle change, but what is happening when you're doing that change is you're swapping the pressure point. It's a little adjustment in your thumb. You're creating relief there. In a long playing session, that is going to make a difference. Now, how should you implement this? Well, when you're practicing bar chords, do pay a little bit of attention to where your thumb is and just recognize you can shift your thumb position really quickly, really easily. This is not a hard technique at all. Eventually what will happen is you'll just subconsciously develop that. Do I think about where I put my thumb when I'm playing bar chords today? No, not at all, because it's been burned into my mind that my thumb is a movable object and therefore it can move. It doesn't need to be in a static position. Keep in mind, the core thing we're trying to achieve here is to eliminate as much static position as we can, because by doing so we eliminate or mitigate as much tension developing. So just keep in mind that thumb is movable, so move it. The other thing a lot of new guitarists don't often realize is, like I said, they're actually overcompensating. They're applying way too much pressure, and that's in an effort to try and develop good technique so that each string is ringing out. The problem is I would never advise you not to apply the pressure required to make those strings ring out. And when you're starting to play, you probably have more like a kitten grip rather than a Herculean grip. It's just because you haven't developed the strength in your wrist. It's a very particular type of strength required, so it's not really to do with how strong you are as a person, essentially. You'll get the strength just by playing, essentially, and by ensuring that you are making each note ring out, you'll get that strength. To begin with, you're overcompensating. That's perfectly fine. When you get a better feel for the guitar and have more strength in your wrist, you will stop overcompensating by creating the required pressure. This isn't something I would necessarily say is a technique you need to focus on too much. It'll just happen. What won't just happen sometimes is the realization you need to use your whole body. And it can be sometimes a revelation to guitarists when they recognize, wait a minute, by actually using their whole body makes a big difference. It's a bit analogous to this. Your guitar is more than just your pickups. The sound of your guitar, should I say, is more than just the pickups. The sound of your guitar is your whole body. The body of the guitar, the neck of the guitar, the strings of the guitar, even the metal components of the guitar make a big difference as to how the guitar is ultimately going to sound. Naturally, your whole body is responsible for your playing, how you approach the guitar and your technique. Now, a simple way to illustrate this is pick a bar chord, let's just say A bar, and deliberately dull the notes so you're not applying the required pressure. Just gently rest your thumb on the back there, in the vertical position for now, or horizontal if you want to practice it like that, doesn't really matter. I mean, you can do it even without having your thumb on the string at all. It doesn't matter actually. And take your right arm, place it on the body of your guitar, and I want you to push so that what's happening is the guitar wants to go that way. And with your left hand, I want you to now resist. Yeah, I don't even have my thumb on the back here, so I can't rely on any tensile grip strength here. It's just purely the tension I'm putting in the guitar that's forcing the one hand. You're using motion here to your advantage. I'm exaggerating completely the effect here, but it's something you can do subtly to help alleviate the pressure in your wrist, alleviate how much of a tensile grip is required. So that's another great strategy to apply. The final one I want to look at today, well, not the final one, but the final technique I want to look at today specifically, is just like adjusting your thumb position creates these pockets of alleviating sort of tension from building up. Adjusting your entire wrist position is going to help even more, actually. When you first started playing the guitar and you learned the F shape, and then you heard about bar chords, movable bar chords, well, you may have also realized that the F is movable, and you think to yourself, wow, I wish I could just play bar chords like that, because they wear easier, yeah? Well, the thing of it is you can, of course, because you still have a thumb. So what some people call the Hendrix grip, other people call it a cowboy bar chord. I like to call it a monkey bar chord, and that's to take your thumb, to latch it all the way around, so that you're creating the position to dead it here. Well, not deaden it, but we can deaden it. That's a different technique though. But to sound it out, what you want to do is get into a way where both the bottom E and the high E, bass E, high E, are both ringing out. That gives you an indication that you've got kind of the right grip at this point, and you can actually hold the guitar with one hand and play. Okay? Fantastic. These are an absolute lifesaver for long sessions. Works just as well for a minor chord as well, by the way. Not so good for a seventh chord though, so just keep that in mind. Altogether, you can incorporate those different techniques in one singular chord progression, and it's really good to do so because you're eliminating the possibility of tension to really create in your wrist. So for example, yeah, very nice. It's a great technique to develop to be able to incorporate those different styles. So what's the next thing we could look at for making bar chords less feel like you're breaking your wrist when you're doing them? Well, one of them is to actually adjust the action of your guitar itself. And this is going to depend on where you are and what stage you are at in your guitar playing, I would say. If you're right at the beginning, adjusting your action, I'm never going to advise, simply because it's something you need to learn how to do, number one. And if you don't want to learn how to do it, you have to get someone to do it for you. When you've just started playing the guitar, not having your guitar in your hands is time when you're not playing it. And to be honest with you, at the starting point of your playing, it's more crucial to be playing the damn guitar than having it being set up somewhere. There is a sort of that crucial moment where people either put the guitar down, usually because they can't play bar chords actually, or their fingers hurt or something like that, or they'll persevere. Well, the best way to give yourself, the best chance to give yourself to persevere is to play the damn guitar. You're not going to be learning if you're not playing. And using the idea that the action of your guitar is too high, for example, and using that as an excuse for your inability to play bar chords isn't going to work. And it's not really the right attitude. I played on a guitar when I first started that had a really high action. Now, I hope nobody else has to play on a guitar that is of that kind of standard, and that you're all playing on much lower action guitars than what I learned on. But the point is not to say, oh, look at me. The point is to say, don't use it as an excuse. But do keep in mind, it is something you can do. You can adjust the action of your guitar and it'll help a lot. The final thing I want to look at is actually, I'm going to have a whole video dedicated to this. It's sort of around the idea, concept of, do you even need to play a bar chord? Because very often you don't. There are different approaches to guitar playing. I don't always need to play a full bar chord. I can play a power chord. I can play a broken chord. Yeah, different technique can be developed to not necessarily to compensate, but to recognize I don't always need to play that full bar chord. Anyway, just remember the two main techniques that we covered here. One is doing the monkey bar chord. It's a lifesaver. The other one is to recognize that your thumb can actually move, and yeah, move it. That's me for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Above all, I hope you found it useful, actually.